Well, welcome to my backyard studio, and I love this backyard. Kevin Mills here. Something that really struck me as important, and those of you who watch this channel, you know how much I talk about this, and in some ways, I'm somewhat apologetic for discussing this again, but at the same time, not really, because public enemy number one, public enemy number one. 99% of the time, 95% of the time, I don't know, I haven't actually looked, but out of 25 years of beekeeping experience, out of talking with many, many other beekeepers, both hobbyists, both sideliners, both commercial, multi-generational, 9 times out of 10, 95% of the time, whatever. Public enemy number one is mites, Varroa mites. And I'll tell you a little story to reiterate this, actually a few from our industry that you may find interesting. The last 9 days, I guess it's been 10 days now, but I had to make 3 round trips, fortunately flying, to Sacramento to go assess our bees. Some of our bees started going backwards, and this was right before putting them in the almonds. And with the way the weather's been down there and everything, our customers, the farmers, were getting in a bit of a panic because the almonds were starting to bloom. But the storms were keeping our bees from being able to go in some places. And at the same time, my partner down there was like, Kevin, you better get down here and check these bees. Something's going wrong with them. And so went down there, and we had about 150 colonies just die, just go backwards. And what was interesting to me is that, this obviously bothered me, to say the least. But I was talking with a couple of other beekeepers, commercial guys who are running on average anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 hives. And they were having higher losses than I was. And at this point, just to give you an idea of where we're at, to give you and I'll tie this all together, just bear with me, because if you are a beekeeper and you've been having a problem keeping your bees alive, I guarantee you this will be a valuable video for you. Just let me tell you some stories. So at the top of the year, this was like end of May or so of last year, we were around 1,200 colonies. Now we're around 450 or so. And obviously, to me, that's a big drop. However, I was talking to one gentleman that runs 6,000 colonies in the Midwest. He's down, he lost 75%. There was another gentleman runs 10,000 colonies, and he's down to about 3,500 that are good. And then there's another gentleman that runs around 5,000 colonies, or correction, he had brought in 2,500 colonies for almonds, and out of the 2,500, about 1,100 made grade. Now, if you're wondering what's going on, and I guess if you're a hobbyist and a sideliner, this is actually meant to be an encouragement in a roundabout way, in the sense of that, one of the largest parts of our business is selling nukes, and people get discouraged seeing their bees die, and understandably, bees are more expensive now than they ever have been, and so is equipment. And plus, too, you just get attached to them. It sucks to see them die. But use this as an encouragement that the guys that are professional, myself included, it's very difficult to maintain a consistent amount of hives. Now, interestingly enough, there's really one key thing to focus on. So even though it's difficult, and I guess maybe this is the best way to say it, is that what's killing our bees is not difficult. It's the viruses that the mite carry. And I know there's going to be some people who say, well, no, it's the neonicotinoids or whatever, the pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. Those are always a secondary cause, almost always a secondary cause. Not always, but almost always a secondary cause. The main thing is the compromising of the honeybee colony's health from the viral issues that the mites carry. Now, so here's the thing, is it's not complicated. We have to really focus on one enemy more than anything, which is keeping our mites under wraps under a certain threshold. That threshold now would be 2 mites per 100 bees or under. Even at 2 mites per 100 bee, and how you achieve that is obviously through an alcohol wash. That'd be the easiest and most effective way. Even at 2 mites per 100, we're starting to see viral issues that cause decline of the hive, even if we get the mite levels under control, if that makes sense. Here's another example. So the bees that went backwards for us were the bees that we sent into honey production later in the year. I'll break that down practically. So usually what happens is that our honey flow here usually starts at the beginning of June, wraps up by mid-July, weather permitting. And we have all the honey pulled off by the end of July and mite treatment on by the first week of August at the absolute latest. We went after a specialty crop of fireweed honey, which we've been doing actually the last couple of years. But that doesn't start until usually about mid-July to the beginning of August. Now, we tried doing an oxalic acid treatment on these hives that were going to go up for fireweed to try and knock the levels of mites down that had increased over our summer honey production here in this area through June and July. But it still wasn't enough. And those are the hives that we're seeing crashing, and understandably so. And interestingly enough, in North and South Dakota and Montana, a lot of producers who went after the clover crop are seeing the same thing. And so what's changed is actually pretty simple. It's the viruses that the mites carry have continued to mutate to the point that our threshold of mites that can be per 100 bees, you say, and the colony actually survive has continued to decrease. And so let this just be an encouragement to you, and also a warning, if you will. When I was flying back this one time from Sacramento, I was wearing my I Like It Raw and Sticky t-shirt, and then it has our honey company name on the back. And this couple stopped me and they said, "Are you a beekeeper?" And I said, "Yes." And the guy said, "Yeah, I am too." He says, "I've got a couple of hives," but he said, "Man, I have a hard time keeping them alive." And I told him, I said, "That's pretty normal," but I said, "What were your mite levels?" And he says, "Well, I didn't check them. I didn't see any." And and I very politely, because I get it. Most people who have one or two hives, you don't have the time. Maybe you're one of those folks. You don't have the time to be on top of everything that's happening in beekeeping. Here we are, that's our job, and we're having a hard time a lot of times getting a model that's not just sustainable, but it's also consistent as far as maintaining our bee health. So I just told her, I said, "Well, don't just rely upon visual. Make sure you check, do alcohol washes, do et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And so let that just be a reminder to, and just kind of an update too, for whatever it's worth, that you really need to be on top of your mites. We've gotten to the point now in our industry, there's some really promising things coming down the line genetically as far as honeybees. Maybe some of you saw that actually this year we're offering nukes that are stocked with genetics from the Washington State University breeding program. But still, we're not at a place where we're mite tolerant. And any place that's advertising that, I would be very suspicious of at this point. But we are getting closer. And so anyway, so yeah, just make sure that you're on top of your mite levels and that you're monitoring them consistently. And that's really kind of the moral of the story. And if your bees have died, or you're halfway through the winter and half of your bees have died, believe me, any of us in the industry, we know how that goes. We know how it feels. It sucks. But also just realize that's just the reality, and that if that's happened, it's almost always related back to mites. The hives that we saw go backwards were related to us not getting our mite levels down early enough in the season because we were going after that second honey flow. And so these are all things, and on the business side, these are all things that you're having to measure constantly to see, okay, what are the pros and what are the cons? With the way bulk honey prices are for producers in the in the Midwest, they're really going to have to sharpen their pencils to see whether honey production and the inherent risk of that, inherent being not only the mite levels that accumulate through, your bees being out there, but also just the risk of whether you produce anything or not. A honey crop is one of those things that may or may not happen no matter what area you're in. So anyways, hopefully there's just a lot of information that I just wanted to share with you, and hopefully it's valuable to you. And I will catch you a little later. Bye-bye.